Good evening, Hagai and Margot. Good evening, Jan. Good evening, James. Jim. It's going live. We're live on Facebook. We'll be live on YouTube here in a moment. Here we go. We're live on YouTube. We are recording. Let's just share it on the other Facebook pages, and we should be set, as they say in Hebrew, in Israel, B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Everybody says that. I don't know if they mean it, but they definitely say it.
That was great last time.
Thank you. I heard regards. Okay, there we go. Good evening, Pancho. Good evening, Edwards. Good evening, Ruth. Just going to take a moment here to share it, and we'll get going. Copy link. Video, There we go. Thank you all for your patience.
Before we get going, let me apologize. I just got back in from Singapore and Indonesia, and I'm hungry, so I'm going to have dinner. I'll be here, but you won't see me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. We are broadcast on all the platforms. Welcome back, Eliyahu, Elliot. We are in the final stages of the book of Deuteronomy. Today we are in the portion of Nitzavim Vayelech, the double portion. So we are going to begin. I'll give you the page number in our live Chumash in just a moment here. Oh, we are going to be at the top of page 1243. That's where we're going to begin today. So open up your Chumash to page 1243. I'll give you a moment there to get it. Also going to find another pasuk here in a moment.
How's your nose? Did that
we're in the middle of a live class, Elliot. We could discuss my nose when we're not being broadcast and recorded.
Oh,
but
sorry,
Baruch Hashem, my nose is wonderful. If I'm sitting here, it's a good sign. But thank you for asking. We are on the road to recovery. Okay, good design. Good evening, Daniel. Okay, I'm going to mute everybody. Go because I can hear. Mute design. There we go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's a double Torah portion, the two shortest Torah portions in the entire 5 books of Moses. Just to give you some context, if we're doing if there's only 4 portions left for the Torah until we get to the end, and we're doing 2 of them this Shabbos and Shul, and then there's only 2 left, how is it that Simchas Torah is not for another month? And the answer is that Yom Kippur is on Shabbos, so we don't read a regular Torah portion. Chol Hamoed Sukkos, the intermediate day, the 3rd day of Sukkot is a Shabbos, so we read a special reading for Chol Hamoed for the intermediate days. Therefore, we end up reading the Zayis HaBracha, the final portion, on Simchas Torah, and it makes perfect sense. So let's delve into a discussion today about what are the reasonable expectations of self. Most of people's dilemmas in their life are because they create expectations for themselves that are totally unreasonable. And the greatest setup for feelings of failure is to create expectations that are unreal, unrealistic, unreasonable. We spend so much of our life mopping up disasters, mopping up messes, or fixing challenges that are self-inflicted. Why are they self-inflicted? because we create expectations that are not realistic. So when they don't come to fruition, then we feel bad. And that's not a healthy way to live. It's not a Jewish way to live. Of course, in Judaism, we believe wholeheartedly in people striving and trying to be better and growth mindset. Even in my kids' school, they have this concept called growth mindset. It's a good thing. But the idea of creating images in your mind, imaginary goals that are unrealistic, is just unreasonable and sets you up for failure. Imagine, and I was learning this morning with a chavrusa of mine, Shia, who lives in Bell Harbor in Florida. We learn on Wednesdays, and we were learning the gates of trust, Sha'ar Bitachon, from the Rabbeinu Bachya and the duties of the heart, the Chovos HaLevavos. He says we have this expectation that if we have money in the bank, we have to use it all. And Rabbeinu Bachya says, what are you talking about? Part of it's for you, part of it's to take care of your family and your servants and your assistants, and part of it is meant to be in your account because maybe you need to give an inheritance to your children. Maybe it's the employee workers. God's giving you the money and entrusting with the idea that just because you have all the money in your bank means that you need to use it right away on indulgences, on upgrades that you don't really need is a big mistake. If people tried just to earn a living and they were happy with earning a living that paid their bills, that paid their basic sustenance, shelter, and clothing, the world would be a much happier place. But we're Americans. We're big, fat Americans who like sitting in big, fat cars. I'm quoting my father. I heard this my whole childhood. Agresa Oldsmobile. We used to have an Oldsmobile back in the day in the late 80s that was like a boat. But in Brooklyn, to have that Oldsmobile was a big American. It wasn't a Toyota or a Honda from Japan. Huh? Exactly. You could sit yourself. My father used to say that this mamish we driving on a couch. In his mixture of Yiddish, Hebrew, and English, it's just like you're driving on an actual couch. Right? That's how we Americans have been trained to think. Right? You ask a typical kid coming out of college, I need to earn a living, not to make a living. I need to make a living. I need to pay. I need to have not a trust fund, a college fund for my kids. I need to have 3 vacations a year, paid vacations. I need to have, what do they call it? The maternity leave, paternity leave. All day they're busy with 150 things that they need. And sushi and liquor and a whole day. So with those expectations, of course, you're going to create an unhappy society. If the iPhone 13 is only good for 2 years, and then you need the 15, the 16, the 17, you know what happened to me a few weeks ago? This is all an introduction. My phone was so cracked, the screen, that I had no choice. I finally had a few minutes. I ran to AT&T. He's a nice guy that works at AT&T. When they're open, they're never open because there's no employees. But when you catch them, they're actually open. He's a sweetie pie. So he looks at my phone and he says, you know, this is the glass cover on your phone. Your phone is untouched. I said, you're kidding me? I've been walking around with this busted up screen for like 6 months. So he cracks off this whole glass protector and my screen is brand new. So he says, go to Staples, buy a cover, like a back cover. So what was going to cost me, I don't know, $1,300 to get a new phone, I left with $52 and I was the happiest guy in Bozeman walking around. Why? Because this iPhone 13 is perfectly fine for me. I don't need the 15. Not because I don't like nice things. I just simply look at my phone. I don't see a need for it. But when you're trained to have incredible, unrealistic expectations, you are setting yourself up for failure. And there's no difference. I should say no difference. There's very little difference when it comes to material and physical stuff and when it comes to spiritual stuff. If you set yourself up for unrealistic spiritual expectations, you are setting yourself up for a feeling of spiritual degradation, and you're not going to feel good about your spiritual well-being. And with that introduction, I'd like to take you to this week's Torah portion. On the top of 1243, it says, God, your God, will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children, enabling you to love God, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, for the sake of your life. So growing up, if you're Jewish, maybe probably even if you're not, you've heard of circumcision. You remove the foreskin on the male organ. What about circumcision of your heart? No one talks about it, even though it's right here. It's a biblical verse in the book of Deuteronomy. What does the verse say? Let's delve into that for a moment. The verse says, God, your God, will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children. So the circumcision here is going to be done by God, enabling you to love God, which obviously if your heart's not circumcised, it's going to be very hard to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, for the sake of your life. Now, why is that interesting? Because if you want to jump back, if you'd like, for a moment to page 1125 in the same Chumash, so 4 weeks ago in the Torah portion, in the book of Deuteronomy. You don't even have to leave Deuteronomy. It's right here. Chapter 10, verse 16 of Deuteronomy of Parshas Eikev, it says, you should circumcise the foreskin of your heart, which blocks you from serving God, and you should stop being stiff-necked. Stop being stubborn. Now, if you paid attention a little bit to the difference between these two verses, there's three clear differences. Number one, in the beginning of Deuteronomy in Eikev, who is doing the circumcision? You should circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Who's you? The Jewish person is obligated to circumcise the foreskin of his heart. In our Torah portion, in Nitzavim and Vayelech, it says, God, your God, will circumcise your heart. So the first difference between the two is who's the moil? Is God the moil, the circumciser, or are you the circumciser that's going to circumcise the heart? Difference number two, in the beginning of Deuteronomy a few weeks ago, it says you will circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Over here in our Torah portion, it says, God, your God, will circumcise your heart. It does not say the foreskin, it just says your heart, straight up. So that's difference number two. And the third difference is that earlier in Deuteronomy, it only mentions the person. You shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Over here in our Torah portion, it says, God, your God, will circumcise your heart and the hearts of your children. The children are added as well. So what's the difference between the two? We're both in Deuteronomy. We're both talking about, obviously, doing some form of circumcision in the heart area, whether it's the heart itself or the foreskin of the heart, whatever that means. We'll see in a minute what that means. One is for the children, one is not. One God does, one we do. So in 1983, I mean, there's a little bit of a talk like this semi in 1974, but the majority of it is 1983. It's printed in the edited talks of the Rebbe, volume 29. For those of you that are watching online that would like to go later and learn it in the original Hebrew, the Rebbe explains as follows, and it's very, very powerful because it connects us to what I said in the introduction about expectations, and it also connects us to the Sefer Tanya, the book of Tanya, the magnum opus of Chabad Hasidism, which talks a lot about what to expect from ourselves. The word foreskin of the heart, Rashi says over there in the beginning of Deuteronomy, what's the foreskin of the heart? The plugged up, covered heart. So what does it mean to circumcise the foreskin of your heart? It's a call to the Jewish people to remove the clogged heart. In other words, to unclog the spiritual arteries of your heart that are stopping you, holding you back from internalizing God's words. God is trying to penetrate your heart. He's trying to uplift you. He's trying to have you internalize his message. God is sometimes talking to the wall. Which wall? The foreskin of your heart that you have built to cover over your heart and not allow God to penetrate. How do you clog your heart? Well, how do you clog your heart physically? Fat. Oh, well, unhealthy fat and salami and sugar and schmaltz and potato kugel and all the things that help Jews invent the stent. Right? They said once, didn't they say once as a joke? They said once as a joke that why do Jews have so much cardio issues? Because they're all Jews in their heart. And everything's stuffed in your heart. Of course, you're going to get a heart attack. But jokes aside, we create a buffer. We create this sort of wall that we put up that keeps out spirituality. It keeps God out. And we do that by our behavior. Don't blame anyone else. The choices we make, just like with our physical eating, the choices we make affect our heart and our spiritual feelings that are supposed to be penetrating the heart. So when God says earlier in Deuteronomy, you should circumcise the foreskin of your heart, he's asking us to start unclogging and removing the blockages that are holding back your feeling. Right? A guy comes to shul, he says, Rabbi, I came to shul and I felt nothing. That's like me going to the gym and saying, I went on the treadmill for 15 minutes and I did not lose weight and I did not fix all my bodily problems. You went for 15 minutes. You want to fix 40 years of overeating and 15 minutes on the treadmill? You want to fix all your spiritual ailments that you've created by your behavior, by showing up in shul one service and you didn't feel all giddy? How could you feel? You've numbed the feelings by clogging your system with harta, with garbage. That's the beginning of Deuteronomy. In our Torah portion, we're talking about someone where it says clearly in the verse that you will return to God your God, and you will listen, hearken to his voice with all your heart and with all your soul. We're not talking about someone that still has the foreskin of his heart. We're talking about a Jew that has worked like an Elul. We do tshuva. We have introspection and repentance and return to our core essence. We're talking about a Jew that's working. Or as Mike Chait, our dear friend, used to say, a Jew that's really on a journey. He's working it. She's working it. And they're starting to feel. The foreskin has been removed. It's not clogged. It's not blocked. So then what does the verse say? It says, God, your God, will circumcise your heart. Not the foreskin, because the foreskin's gone already. We did that already. We're talking about someone that's done the work. What is that? So if you look in our Torah portion, it talks about how we lived amongst the Gentiles, the idolaters, and we saw all their idolatrous ways. And God is warning us not to follow the idolaters and the idolaters. In other words, we're dealing with a person who has feelings. They've cleared a big part of the blockage. So what's their big challenge? Now that you feel, you're not numb anymore. You know, it's a big challenge when you start feeling things. It's one of the things I discovered in therapy. It's a very harsh recognition when it hits you, is that when you're blocked off for so long, when you stuff your emotions for so long, you get used to it. You don't allow it to work. You don't allow the feelings to be expressed or to even be felt. You're numbing it. And I don't mean numbing it with addictive things like alcohol or drugs or pornography or gambling, whatever. I'm talking about simply you train your body to keep it inside, to lock it in a closet, to put it away with a ribbon and a box and stuff it away. When you start feeling, it becomes very tough because you've never done this before. Suddenly you are getting offended. Suddenly you are feeling resentment. Suddenly you are feeling sensitivity and compassion, right? It's a very interesting transformation. So if you circumcised your heart and you're working on yourself and you're becoming a real person by removing the clogging and removing cleaning the arteries, so to say, the spiritual arteries, you're doing a spiritual stent to clear it out. And now you're starting to feel, and now you become depressed. Why do you become depressed that you're feeling? Because you realize, oh my gosh, I have all these external forces that are trying to attract me to their unholy things. We live in a world that's full of temptation, not just sexual temptation, all types of temptation, money temptation, and ego temptation, and power temptation, and it goes on. The list never stops. You say to yourself, hold on, it was better when I wasn't feeling anything. When I had this big foreskin over my heart, covered over, I didn't have to feel. Now I'm feeling and it's making me crazy. Am I such a low person that I should be so tempted just by the things that I see? I mean, the Talmud says that the eye see, and once the eye sees, like candy, the eye sees and the heart starts tempting. The heart wants it. That's why in Judaism there's a concept of shmiras einayim, to try to watch what you see. You can't unsee that which has been seen. Soon I'm going to sound like Kamala Harris. Right? I'm just saying, right? Yeah. Unburden the burden. Unsee what you already see. You can't unsee what you've already seen.
Can't unring the bell either.
Right. And so if you're going to look at things that are inappropriate, if you're going to chase things, whether it's money or women or men or addictions or power or ego, it's going to be hard to unsee it. So what happens? You started feeling, you did the first part of the service, you started the tshuva process, you circumcised your heart, you got rid of the foreskin, you did that work yourself. God didn't do it for you, you did it for yourself. Now that you started feeling, you're falling apart. Because the world becomes real, temptation and feelings are real, it's making you crazy. And you're wondering if maybe you did a mistake by circumcising, getting rid of the foreskin in the first place. Comes along the Torah and says, no, you didn't do the wrong thing. Only God, your God, can circumcise your heart. The foreskin of the heart you can do. Taking away all temptation, which is the actual hatchet, the circumcision of the heart itself, meaning you're chopping down the temptation and whatever the feelings that are in the heart that are inappropriate. Only God does that, and God only does that when Mashiach comes. Until Mashiach comes, you don't control whether you're going to have a temptation or not. It's natural to have a temptation. The only thing you control is whether you're going to push that temptation away, which is Tanya 101. It's truly the essence of Tanya. The biggest mistake Jewish bubbies and Jewish grandmothers and mothers have told their children is the little kid, I got told, oh, you're such a tzaddik. You're such a tzaddik. You're right. Tzaddik means a righteous person. A genuinely perfect, complete Jew. How many are there? Very few. The Alter Rebbe and Tanya, the founder of Chabad Hasidism of Shneur Zalman of Liadi, his emphasis is that we are each meant to be a Beinani, an intermediate Jew. You're not wicked, you're not righteous. You know what you are? You're a Jew in the struggle. And what does it mean to be a Jew in the struggle? Not that you're going to get rid of temptation, then you'd be a tzaddik, then Mashiach would be here. And God has to do that for you. You can't do that on your own. It means that when you get a temptation, when your heart starts feeling or your brain starts thinking, you take control. You are in control of your emotions. You are in control of your heart. In Tanya's terms, it's called Moyach Shalit al Halev. The brain controls the heart. And you absolutely have control. One of the biggest, or perhaps the biggest, maybe the biggest is removing God from society, but the second biggest failure of our American society, for that matter, Europe, is that we told people that if you feel something, it's okay. No, a lot of our feelings are really bad, really warped, really messed up, really sinful, really negative. Imagine you tell someone, oh, you're angry? You want to kill someone? That's okay. That's how you feel. That's okay. Instead of saying to the kid, let's dig a little deeper and figure out why you are angry and whether anger is the right attribute here, and whether it's going to get you where you want to go, whether it's productive or totally unproductive, right? Have a sane conversation. No, that's how you feel. Tatala, beautiful. America, that's how you feel? Oh, okay, sweetie. What kind of crazy thing is that? The basis of being a human being and not an animal is that moyach shalit al, your brain controls your heart. So even if your heart sees something, your eyes and your heart see something that you want, control yourself. You're not an animal. You're not an instinctive, emotional being. You have a brain, or at least God created you as one. Use it. But why is that so important? Because the only time for most of us, unless you're a tzaddik again, so I'm talking to most of us, The only time you're never going to have a temptation is when Mashiach comes. And if you're going to live your life today, before Mashiach comes, thinking that, oh, I must be a real bad person, because now that I've circumcised my foreskin of my heart and I have feelings, and I realize that I'm not perfect, and I realize that I have temptations that are really ugly and dark, that must mean that I'm a really bad person. No, not at all. It just means you're a person. And if you're a person, your job is to control that. Right? Someone said to me years ago in Dillon, I was giving a lecture at the University of Montana Western. I said, Rabbi, I mean, do religious Jews, like the Bible says, do not commit adultery. Do religious Jews even want to commit adultery? I'm like, are you kidding? What do you think? God said, thou shalt not commit adultery, what? To a secular Jew that he found in the Lower East Side? Who do you think he was talking to? First of all, he has to be talking to someone that reads the Bible. If the guy doesn't read it, there's no one to talk to in the first place. So God is talking to the person reading the Torah, and he's saying to him, I don't care who you are. You're not protected. You're not some magical being, some unicorn that doesn't have temptations. You are a human being that has temptations. I don't care how religious you think you are. You are capable of sin. So my answer to the student in Dillon was, every man I know is a potential adulterer. The only question is if they actually commit adultery, if they control themselves or not. And that's the whole difference. Being an animal or being a person, that's the division. Are you a person with a brain that controls their emotions? Or are you an emotional fruitcake, which is basically an animal that just acts instinctively? So if we end up internalizing this idea that only God, your God, will circumcise your heart, and only that will happen when Mashiach comes, which, by the way, that's why it includes the children as well. Because whenever you're going to get your heart circumcised by God, your children will get their heart circumcised too. When you're doing the work, getting rid of the foreskin of the heart, that's your work, so it's your heart. But when God is going to get rid of everyone's tempestuous heart, he's going to get rid of your kid's tempestuous heart as well. And only he can do it. So if you take that into mind, if you take that to heart, you realize if the only expectation that Hashem has of me realistically is to make sure that when a temptation comes to me, I deliberately push it away and say, no, I don't want you. You're messing with me. Stay away from me. And you control yourself, you should walk around with a badge of honor. Why? I'm not a tzaddik, because God doesn't need you to be a tzaddik. He wants you to be you. He wants you to be a Jew in the struggle, but one that overcomes the temptation by pushing it away. And in Tanya, the term, he says, you push it away with two hands. In other words, it's a deliberate act. Bug off. It's a very, very powerful idea. Right? I still remember I was telling George Wallner at Chavi's party on Sunday that when I was a yeshiva student back in the day, 2004, we were in Helena here in Montana. I was 22 years old. And on our list of names of Jews that we put together, from this one, from that one, there was a name of a guy, his name was Fritz Baer. He passed away, so I can mention his name. He had converted to Catholicism officially like 40 years before I came. Like, he married a Catholic woman. He was checked out from the Jewish faith for a very long time. I was like, he's a Jew. He's only 2 miles from my hotel in Helena. We're going to visit him. I'll never forget it till the day I die. It was Monday morning. I'm laughing now as I remember it. We rang the doorbell. It was me and my friend Yitzchak Feldman, who's today the rabbi in Bend, Oregon. And he opens the door and he sees two yeshiva bachrim, two yeshiva students standing in front of him. And it was like almost like he was possessed immediately. And he went like this, no, no, no. 3 times he said no. And he was about to slam the door in my face. And I said, good Shabbos. I don't even know where it came from. It was Monday morning. And he responded. He said, good Shabbos, and slammed the door in my face. And to me, the fact that he said good Shabbos, so it was right there on his tongue, 40 years, right, to convert it. But he had to push me away with 2 hands because he knew that if I make it through that door, his entire life, as it is, I probably ruined his entire rest of his life, reminded him who he was. That's why he was so resistant, because it was reminding him of his childhood. But he had to push me away. And he did. I mean, he slammed the door and I moved on. Actually, the year later, we sent matzah to every Jew that I knew in Montana. It was like 80 homes. And he sent it back to Brooklyn.
Wow.
You know, we got the box back and it said return to sender. Again, he had to resist, right? Today, everyone talks about the resistance. The resistance. He was part of my resistance. But the point is, you got to push back. When the Yetzer Hara comes for you, you got to push back. And when you do, that's what makes you valuable. Because no one's expecting you to get rid of the temptation altogether. We're just expecting you to control it. And that each and every one of us is capable of. There's a term in the Talmud. The Talmud says, if this disgusting creature encounters you, the evil inclination, you schlep him into shul. Right? You feel tempted by something wrong, run into a shul. And if you don't have a shul, run and grab a Torah, run and grab a siddur, learn, daven. The evil inclination will know what to do with you. You're trying to daven now, you're messing up all his plans. You're trying to learn Torah, you're messing with his head. The kids have a song they learned in summer camp. It's called Chichi 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 Wawa. It's like a kiddie song about how the evil inclination is like a chihuahua. Just little annoying little voice that comes after you like a chihuahua, and your job is to knock him out of the park. It's a very cute song. My in-laws were listening to the car on Monday morning when they were here, and they thought it was very cute. Point is, don't get bent out of shape. And if you fail, let's say sometime a temptation comes your way, and you tried, but you couldn't resist. Try again next time. Each time you win, it's a win.
Pray forgiveness.
Well, you have to always ask for forgiveness. We say 3 times in the Amidah, 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. God, forgive me because I've sinned. We're obviously pretty simple if we have to say it 3 times a day. And that's fine. Don't sin and say, oh, I'm going to sin and God's going to forgive me, because then it says he doesn't. If you're doing the sin with the intention of forgiveness, it doesn't work. But you don't get obsessed. You're not so important that you should never have a temptation. You're not a tzaddik. You're just a good Jew trying to make a better day spiritually. Some days you succeed, some days you don't, but don't ever give up the fight, because every win, every time you push the evil inclination away, that's a win for God, that's a win for your soul, for your neshama, that's a win for humanity, that's a win for the world. And when Mashiach comes, we'll get rid of all your temptation. Until then, stop getting so bent out of shape. You're not so special. So as we approach Rosh Hashanah, and of course next Wednesday night, we will not have class because it'll be Rosh Hashanah. Not the ultimate class. It'll be the Day of Judgment, baby. As we approach Rosh Hashanah, let this new year of 5785 be a year which we take control. Stop letting our emotions control us. We need healthy emotions. We need to remove the foreskin. We need those emotions to be felt, but don't let them be in charge. Anytime emotions are running the show, it's a disaster, as they say in New York. It's a disaster. Why? Because animals have an instinct. You can have emotions, but you have to have them relegated and controlled and channeled via your intellect, because that's what makes you a human being, and that's what makes you a yid. So, with that, I'm going to utilize this moment to wish each and every one of you a k'tiva v'chatima tova l'shana tova u'metuka. It should be signed and sealed in the book of life for an incredible year. And it should be a sweet new year for you and your families, for our communities here in Montana, for Klal Yisrael all over the world, wherever they may be. And the year of 5784 brought horror to our people. It was a year that none of us wanted and none of us expected, and we're almost coming up on a full year since that started. But Hashem is the sweetest of the sweet, and he knows how to give revealed sweetness. So may it be a year revealed sweetness, not sweet like honey, sweet like Mike and Ike's. Real sweet that most people get. That's how sweet we want this year to be. The Toiv Hanira V'Anigla, with revealed and visual good, visible good. And ultimately, we should hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, not of me trying to bust my chops up there with a shofar, but it should be of Mashiach Tzidkenu, our righteous Redeemer, taking us all to Israel. And we'll hear the ultimate shofar blast of Mashiach Tzidkenu B'Meira V'Yameinu. Amen. Shana Tova. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you back here on Wednesday night of the 10 days of Tshuva between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Be holy, be inspired, be uplifted, and have a great year. Sei gesund.